This is Betting Across America. And Wes, anything else that's caught your eye so far as a lot of these marquee games starting to go to the half here in the early window?
Yeah, we do have some second half prices out here because we're going to talk ACC momentarily. So we'll start there. North Carolina 24-0 over Duke. North Carolina minus 6.5 for the second half. 28 on the total. Of course, North Carolina already 1-2 in the league. They lost to both schools in the Commonwealth of Virginia. They lost to Virginia Tech earlier in the season, and the other loss, was to Georgia Tech. They did beat University of Virginia, but North Carolina sitting there at 2-2, 1-2 in the ACC. We'll get to them momentarily. A couple other halftime lines, all tied at 17. Memphis and Temple. Memphis minus 7 for the second half, 29.5 the second half total. Georgia 24-0 over Arkansas. That's pretty much been like 30.5, 31.5 in the in-game all afternoon. 6.5 in the second half, 20 the second half total. Wisconsin got that late score that you mentioned, 13-10 going into the locker room in Camp Randall Stadium. Wisconsin minus a half for the second half, 21 on the total, and also just now going to halftime. Pitt 42-14 over Georgia Tech. Pitt, by the way, maybe start to bet these guys overs because they have been like an under team because we know Narduzzi, a longtime defensive coach at Michigan State. We know that we've seen those scores be low, but they're running tempo now. Kenny Pickett is now a fifth-year senior, so, they're letting him fling the ball down the field, and they're certainly doing it against Georgia Tech today, 42-14 Panthers.
Feeling pretty good about my smart play at the half there. Okay, let's get into the ACC and the nuts and bolts of it because I think it is very interesting. You look at Clemson, obviously, it's still the favorite, but what a small favorite now to win the ACC at minus 150, comparatively speaking, to what they were pre-flop. They're going to take on, a surprising BC team today or tonight. So that could be an interesting matchup. But I just wonder now, Wes, okay, if you're a Clemson backer and you go, boy, they lost to NC State. They turned their back in the Wolfpack, and they got beat. So now you have a conference loss to go with the Georgia loss, which doesn't hurt you, obviously, to win the ACC. At minus 150, are we just convinced that they are going to run the table and they're still going to win this conference?
Yeah, I don't know if I would be convinced. I kind of like them maybe on buying the low today against Boston College because I've seen nobody on the Clemson Tigers today.
Nope.
This is now, it was 16, 14.5. Like, I've seen kind of a lot of the picks, maybe BC a trendy dog. By the way, Phil Yurkovich still out with that hand injury, so it is Dennis Grossel. And I think maybe people remember that game last year where Clemson, it was a DJ Uyangale started there, and they kind of hung on for the win. BC was right there. Clemson was able to pull it out at the end just because they have Clemson talent, and Boston College really does not. But Jeff Hafley's doing a very good job up there, and I'm high long-term on their program. Like in the spot today, I would be liking the Tigers a little bit just because it's like when nobody wants you and you're a premium team, like when the betting public starts to get away from a team they seem to bet all the damn time, that's when you want to jump in because it's like now they're done with them. It's like they lost a couple games and
I bet them on it last week against NC State. I lost to them, so I'm going to bet against them.
You can't have that short-term thing there. Sometimes you do got to go back to the well. Now, eventually, you do it too many times, and maybe Florida State will prove that to me today. We shall see, speaking of the ACC. By the way, too, I do want to update one game in progress since we're on the ACC here. Malik Cunningham, questionable to return, I believe, an eye injury for Malik Cunningham. So it's Evan Conley now at quarterback for the Louisville Cardinals. It is 17-16. I believe extra point is still going to be pending with Louisville and Wake Forest, but that game is currently going on. Wake Forest just tied the game. Sam Hartman with the touchdown pass. So Wake Forest now ranked in the ACC, 24th right now. They are 4-0. I think kind of the joke has been, Wake Forest going to win the ACC. It might not be a joke. They just might. So it's all tied at 17, 4 minutes to go between Wake and Louisville.
All right, if it's not Wake Forest, what about NC State? And again, that huge signature win over Clemson last week is something people are going to look at and say, all right, plus 600 now to win the conference. Obviously, the odds would have been much better pre-Clemson, but now do you have enough stability with this program that you say, yeah, maybe that's not so much of a flyer, and even though it's not as good a value as I would have gotten a week ago, it's still enough of a value that I might consider playing it?
The ACC is basically, they used to do a bit on one of these college football shows years ago called The Wheel of Destiny. This was before Clemson kind of became the dominant program once again in that conference. And nobody in the ACC really stands out to you, to be honest. So that's why I don't know if I'm looking to bet any of these guys right now on this list. Like we were looking Clemson minus 150. That would be kind of a hole because they still have the most talent in the conference.
Sure.
But maybe they do look like they were going to be down. I thought being down this year might be 10-2. Maybe they are going to be a 9-3 team, but is that going to be enough to get to the ACC championship game? And like looking at this list, I know Virginia Tech's got Notre Dame coming in. That's not a conference game this year, even though Notre Dame's kind of a partial member of the ACC.
Kind of a half ACC.
But, that's going to be a tough spot for the Irish, especially if they do get a win here this afternoon. Miami, I want nothing with Miami. They lost.
7 Miami.
They lost to Virginia on Thursday night. Borregales, who I think is going to be a good kicker, they get in position. It was a 31-yarder doinked off the left upright and wide left. Miami just having some trouble down there. They're wanting to get rid of Manny Diaz, and Miami just has had a lot of issues with that program. 2-3, a lot of empty seats there. Of course, the stadium being 45 minutes away from campus probably doesn't help, and this new stadium isn't exactly the old Orange Bowl,
No.
It isn't the old home field advantage for Miami where they came out the smoke and everything, the Jimmy Johnson era.
Yeah, Michael Irvin and the guys.
Yeah.
I look at it, too, at 11-1, and clearly, Wes, you're selling, and I think you're selling for very good reason. To that end about Manny Diaz, I wonder if he wishes he had taken the Temple job now. But are they really going to run him out? Because, again, we're looking at them. What is our expectation level for Miami? Because, again, we're looking at it going, no way I'm taking them at 11-1 to win the ACC. What should the expectation level be for Miami? Is it unrealistic that they're trying to go back to the yesteryear of lore?
There are people that act like, because you're in Miami, you're going to get all these kids to stay home.
Right.
Oftentimes, kids don't want to stay home. They want to go somewhere else.
See a different part of the country.
Yeah, exactly. Have a different experience. Some guys do, but it's not as easy as you think to say, okay, let's keep these kids home. And that other programs don't know that South Florida is rich in football talent and aren't recruiting down there. Everybody is recruiting down there. So, it's a little bit hard for Miami. So I think that's going to be a sell job to me. And I thought Kirk Herbstreit was right. He's like, the administration and the AD got to get on the same page down there to really revitalize Miami football. How important is Miami football to this university?
Hey, to that point, look, I grew up in the 757 in the Virginia Beach area, and Frank Beamer, when he was the head coach at Virginia Tech, recruited the 757, right? And then guess who started to realize that? Florida.
Yes.
The state of Florida. They started coming up there, getting, the Percy Harvins and the like, and realizing there was a lot of talent in that area. And then Virginia Tech didn't have that strategic advantage that they had on that region. Miami's got to figure that out if they're going to turn that program around. But very quickly, to the Virginia Tech point, buy, hold, or sell, plus 800 on my fighting Hokies there in Blacksburg, because I like the makeup of what Justin Fuente is doing this year with this football team, but I wonder, is that number, what would you do with that number there?
Yeah, this is probably a stay away for me. This whole conference is really a stay away for me because
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Well, I mean, I have no idea what's going to happen now that it's so wide open. And, I still think Clemson's the most talented team in the league, and that's why you're seeing them at minus 150, even though NC State has already gotten them. But now, how does NC State and Dave Doran, how do these guys handle success? Because now they're ranked. Of course, you beat Clemson, you're going to get ranked. Clemson's still in that poll, though, at 25, I think. Mainly on the reputation.
Yeah, that's it.
Louisiana, NC State's going to have a big game at Boston College in 2 weeks. They got to go on the road to Miami, got to go on the road to Wake Forest. It's just like you feel like everybody's kind of going to get beat there in that conference. And kind of going back to an update on that conference, Malik Cunningham now back in the game for the Louisville Cardinals. So that is good news for the folks down there in Louisville.
Question.
2 minutes left to go, all tied at 17 between the Cardinals and the Demon Deacons.
All right, we'll keep a watchful eye on everything going on in the ACC.